Dreamscape presents The Church of Dead Girls by Stephen Dobyns, narrated by George Newbern. Prologue. This is how they looked. 3 dead girls propped up in 3 straight chairs. The 14-year-old sat in the middle. She was taller than the others by half a head. The 2 13-year-olds sat on either side of her. Across the chest of each girl was an X of rope leading over her shoulders, down around her waist, and fastened in the back. All 3 girls were barefoot, and their ankles were tied to the legs of their chairs. Even so, the ropes were loose as if to hold their bodies erect rather than to keep their living selves prisoner, meaning they had been tied after they were dead. I didn't witness this. I only looked at the photographs my cousin showed me. There were many photographs. And he said the police had a videotape of the entire attic, but I never saw it. Perhaps the chairs were 2 feet from one another. Because of the dryness of the attic, the girls looked old. They didn't look like teenagers anymore. They were gaunt and bony and resembled women in their 70s. A large air conditioner and dehumidifier had been kept running all day long, day after day, and the moisture had been sucked from their bodies. They were dried out, and their skin looked like dark, wrinkled paper. But they were not equally dried out because they had been killed at different times, so the girl killed most recently looked youngest. The girls' heads were tilted back or to the side. The one in the middle had blonde hair. Long strands hung across her face. The others had brown hair. All 3 had hair down to the middle of their backs, and perhaps this meant something. It gave them a virginal appearance. Although now, looking so old, they appeared nun-like, spinsterish. And by the time the photographs were taken, their hair had become dusty. And they were emaciated. At least 2 of them were, as if they hadn't been fed. But perhaps this was an effect of the dryness. All the vibrancy had been leached from their skin. The hollows of their cheeks were startling indentations. Their gums had receded from their teeth. What were they wearing? Not their original clothes. Those had been taken from them. They wore handmade gowns cut from thick velvet. The middle girl's was dark green with long sleeves and a hem that nearly reached her ankles. The girl on the right wore a gown of dark red. The one on the left a gown of blue. But to speak of the colors is to say nothing. Sewn to the dresses, pinned to them, even glued to them, were stars and moons and suns cut from white or yellow sparkling cloth. But also animals, or rather their silhouettes, dogs and bears, horses and fish, hawks and doves. And there were numbers that seemed random, 5s, 7s, 4s, the glittery numbers one buys at the hardware store to stick on mailboxes. There seemed no pattern to them, and pieces of jewelry, cheap costume jewelry, were pinned to the velvet and were draped over the numbers and stars and animals, bracelets and necklaces and earrings. It took a moment to see the actual color of the dresses because they were so covered with numbers and jewelry and patches of fabric. Did I mention the words? Some of the patches had words written on them, but not words that made sense. CK and NT and TCH and FIL. Fragments of words, the beginnings and ends of words. What could they have meant to anyone? Also attached to the cloth were brass bells and little mirrors, pieces of metal and multicolored glass balls. Presumably, this clutter of patches and jewelry, words and numbers, had been affixed to the dresses after the girls were wearing them and once they were tied to the chairs, because there were none behind their backs or under their bony buttocks. One understood that the girls had been placed in the chairs and decorated after they were dead. And such a labor must have taken days because nothing was helter-skelter. What of the chairs themselves? They were straight-backed, but they hadn't been bought anyplace. They were amateurishly made, knocked together from 2x4s, and they leaned crookedly. But one didn't notice they had been built from 2x4s right away because nearly every inch of their surfaces was covered with the shiny tops of tin cans or round red reflectors, or the bottoms of glass bottles, green and yellow and clear and brown.